The gunshot echoed through the warehouse like thunder trapped in a metal cage. Jenny Carter pressed herself against the cold concrete wall, her hand clamped over her mouth to stop the scream trying to escape. She'd only come to deliver flowers, a last-minute order for what she thought was a wedding venue. Now she was watching a man in an expensive suit stand over a body, smoke still rising from the gun in his hand. The man turned slowly, and their eyes met across the darkness. Jenny's heart stopped. She'd been seen. Igor Kane, the most dangerous man in Riverside, the ghost who ran half the city from shadows and silence, looked at her with eyes that showed no emotion at all. "Run!" her brain screamed, but her legs wouldn't move. Igor walked toward her with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew she had nowhere to go, and when he stopped 3 feet away, he did something she never expected. He smiled. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Neither should you," Jenny whispered before she could stop herself. His smile widened slightly. "No, I suppose not. Are you going to kill me?" The question hung between them like smoke. Igor tilted his head, studying her face in the dim light filtering through broken windows. "That depends entirely on what you do next." Jenny had always believed she was invisible. 26 years old, working 3 jobs to keep her grandmother's flower shop alive, moving through the city like a shadow that nobody noticed or remembered. She liked it that way. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant the foster care system's damage stayed buried where it belonged. But standing in that warehouse, looking into Igor Kane's dark eyes while a dead man cooled on the floor behind him, Jenny realized that being seen by the wrong person could be worse than any nightmare from her childhood. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Igor reached into his jacket and Jenny flinched, but he only pulled out a phone. He took her picture before she could protest. "Now I have your face. If you talk to the police, if you mention this to anyone, I'll know, and I'll find you. I won't talk. I promise." Promises are easy to break. He stepped closer, and Jenny smelled expensive cologne mixed with gunpowder. "I need insurance. Something that keeps you honest." "What kind of insurance?" "You work for me now." "What?" His expression didn't change. "You deliver flowers, don't you?" "I own several businesses that need regular deliveries. You'll service them." "Weekly. It lets me keep an eye on you while you prove you can be trusted. And if I refuse, then we resolve this problem the traditional way." He didn't gesture to the gun, but he didn't need to. Jenny's mind raced through her options and came up empty. She had her grandmother to think about, the shop that was barely surviving, the fragile life she'd built from nothing. "I'll do it." "Smart girl. Be at this address tomorrow at noon." He handed her a business card, his, fingers brushing hers for just a moment. "And Jenny? Don't try to run. I'm very good at finding people who run." He walked back into the darkness, and Jenny stood there shaking, holding a business card that felt like a death sentence in her palm. The next day, Jenny stood outside the address Igor had given her, a restaurant in the downtown district that looked too elegant to be connected to a murderer. But she'd spent the sleepless night researching Igor Kane, reading whispered articles and deleted police reports, learning about the man who controlled Riverside's underworld with iron precision. He'd inherited his father's organization at 25 and transformed it in 10 years from street crime to corporate power. Money laundering through restaurants and nightclubs, politicians in his pocket, and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless to traitors. She should have gone to the police, should have run, should have done anything except walk through the restaurant's front door. But her grandmother needed her medications, and the shop was 3 months behind on rent. And sometimes the only choice was between terrible options and worse ones. A hostess led her to a private dining room where Igor sat alone, papers spread across the table, looking more like a businessman than a killer. "Miss Carter?" "Punctual." "I try. Sit." He gestured to the chair across from him. Jenny sat, keeping her purse close, her phone with the emergency number half-dialed still in her pocket. She'd decided that morning that if he tried to hurt her, she'd at least go down fighting. "The deliveries are simple," Igor began, sliding a folder toward her. "3 restaurants, 2 nightclubs, 1 office building. Weekly arrangements. You'll be given specific instructions about placement and timing. These aren't just flower deliveries. No, they're not. But you don't need to know what else they are. You just need to follow instructions exactly." Jenny opened the folder, scanning the details. The locations were all high-end, and the payment offered was 3 times what she made from normal deliveries. Blood money, her conscience whispered. Survival. The practical part of her brain replied. "One more thing," Igor said, and something in his tone made her look up. "You'll have dinner with me. Once a week." "What?" "I like to know the people who work for me. Consider it part of the arrangement. That's not part of any job description I've ever heard." "You witnessed a murder, Miss Carter. Normal job descriptions don't apply anymore." He wasn't wrong, but the idea of sitting across from him, making conversation while knowing what he was capable of, made her stomach turn. "And if I refuse this part? Then we'll need to renegotiate our entire arrangement." The threat was implicit but clear. Jenny thought about her grandmother, about the shop, about the life she'd fought so hard to build. "Fine. Dinner. Once a week. Good. We start tonight." That first dinner was torture. Igor took her to an upscale steakhouse where everyone seemed to know him, where waiters moved with nervous efficiency and other diners kept their distance. He asked about her life with the casual interest of someone conducting an interview, and Jenny gave him the minimum truth she could manage. The flower shop had been her grandmother's dream, opened 40 years ago when the neighborhood was different. Jenny had grown up helping there during summers, one of the few stable things in a childhood marked by foster homes and social workers. When her grandmother got sick 3 years ago, Jenny had dropped out of college to run the shop full-time. "You gave up your education?" Igor asked, cutting his steak with precise movements. "Someone had to keep the shop alive. It's all she has left of my grandfather. He died when I was 10. Family loyalty. I respect that." "Do you have family?" The question came out before Jenny could stop it. She immediately regretted it, seeing something cold flash across his face. "Not anymore." "I'm sorry. Don't be. Family can be a weakness. People you love become targets. It's better to be alone." Jenny thought about her grandmother, about the way her face lit up when Jenny brought her soup after long days, about the love that had saved her from becoming just another broken foster kid. Being alone sounds horrible. Igor looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. "It's safer." For the rest of dinner, they talked about neutral things: the city, the weather, the construction blocking traffic downtown. But Jenny kept thinking about what he'd said, about choosing loneliness over vulnerability, about building walls so high that nothing could hurt you anymore. When he drove her home that night in a car worth more than her entire shop, he walked her to the door like a gentleman, and the contradiction made her head spin. "Tomorrow," he said. "First delivery. The restaurant on 5th Street. Arrangement goes in the private dining room exactly at 3 p.m. Don't be late." "I won't be." "Jenny." She paused at the door, surprised he'd used her first name. "Don't make me regret this arrangement. I could say the same to you." His laugh was unexpected, sharp, and genuine. "Yes, I suppose you could." The deliveries started simply enough. Jenny would arrive at the specified location, carry in elaborate flower arrangements that seemed too expensive for their purpose, and place them exactly where instructed. Sometimes in dining rooms, sometimes in offices, occasionally in storage areas that made no sense for decoration. She wasn't stupid. She knew the flowers were cover for something else. probably money or information hidden in the elaborate displays. But she followed instructions, kept her eyes down, and tried not to think about what she was becoming. The weekly dinners with Igor continued, and against every instinct she possessed, Jenny found herself getting used to them. He was intelligent, asking questions that made her think, listening to her answers with genuine attention. Never mentioned the murder she'd witnessed, never brought up the gun or the body, or the moment their lives had collided in that warehouse. It was like he'd separated that violence from the man who sat across from her discussing books and city politics. But she couldn't forget. Every time she looked at him, she saw the gun, saw the cold efficiency with which he'd ended a life. 3 weeks into the arrangement, Jenny was making a delivery to one of Igor's nightclubs when she overheard a conversation that changed everything. Two men in expensive suits stood near the bar, their voices low but carrying in the empty club. "Kane's getting soft," one said. "Did you hear he let a witness walk?" "That flower girl." Tommy wanted to clean up the loose end, but Igor said no. Said she was under his protection now. Protection or obsession? The other man laughed. "Our boss doesn't let anyone see his face and live, not unless there's something else going on. Maybe he likes her. Dangerous game if he does. Feelings make you weak. Look what happened to his father." Jenny finished setting up the arrangement with shaking hands, her mind racing. Protection. Was that what this was? Or was she just a loose end he hadn't gotten around to tying up yet? That night's dinner was at Igor's penthouse, the first time he'd invited her to his personal space. The apartment was as cold and expensive as she'd imagined, all modern furniture and empty walls, like a hotel room where no one actually lived. "You're quiet tonight," Igor observed, pouring wine she didn't drink. "Just tired." Tired or afraid? Jenny looked up sharply. Both, maybe. Igor set down the wine bottle, studying her face. "You heard something today. At the club." It wasn't a question. She debated lying but decided on truth. Two men. Talking about how you're getting soft. How I'm a loose end that should have been cleaned up. He didn't seem surprised or angry, just resigned. "I wondered when you'd start questioning the arrangement." "So it's true? You let me live because killing you felt wrong." The honesty in his voice startled her. "I've killed people who deserved it and people who just got in the way. I've made decisions that haunt me and decisions I'd make again without hesitation. But when I saw you in that warehouse, looking terrified but somehow still brave enough to talk back to me, I couldn't do it. I don't understand. Neither do I." Igor moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. "My father taught me that emotions are weakness, that the moment you care about someone, you've given your enemies a weapon to use against you." He was right. His wife, my mother, was used against him. Kidnapped, tortured, killed. All to break him. It worked. He was never the same. I'm sorry. So I built my life around his lesson. No attachments, no weaknesses. Just power and control and the certainty that no one could hurt me because I cared about nothing. Jenny stood, moving closer but keeping distance between them. "That sounds like prison. It's safety." "No, it's slow death." Jenny surprised herself with her vehemence. "I grew up in foster care, Igor. I moved through houses where people saw me as a paycheck or a burden. I learned to be invisible, to need nothing, to expect nothing, and it was killing me. My grandmother saved me by teaching me that being vulnerable, loving people even when it might hurt, that's not weakness. That's the only thing that makes life worth living. You're young. You haven't seen what I've seen. I'm 26 and I've seen plenty. I watched a man die in a warehouse 3 weeks ago. I'm delivering contraband for a crime boss. I'm having dinner with a murderer who somehow treats me better than most legitimate men I've known. You think I don't understand complicated?" Igor turned from the window and something in his expression had shifted. Why do you keep coming to these dinners? Because you'll kill me if I don't? I told you, you're under my protection now. You could disappear and I wouldn't stop you. So why do you keep showing up? Jenny didn't have a good answer. Or rather, she had one she wasn't ready to admit. Because you're the first person in years who actually sees me. Not the struggling shop owner or the tired girl working 3 jobs, but me. And I hate that. I hate that the person who finally makes me feel visible is someone I should be running from. The silence that followed felt heavy with all the things neither of them could say. Finally, Igor spoke, his voice rough. You should run, Jenny. Everything my men said was true. Getting close to me is dangerous. For you and for me. Then why did you bring me here tonight? Why risk having me in your personal space? Because apparently I'm more my father than I thought. Apparently some things are worth the risk. The kiss happened before either of them decided it would. One moment they were standing across the room from each other. The next Igor had crossed the distance, and Jenny was reaching up to meet him halfway. It was desperate and terrifying and felt like jumping off a cliff with no idea if there was water below. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Igor rested his forehead against hers. This is a mistake. Probably. We barely know each other. True. You're a criminal. Yes. I witnessed you commit murder. Also yes. But neither of them moved away. Instead, Igor took her hand, leading her to the couch where they sat in silence that somehow felt comfortable. Tell me about your grandmother, he said finally. Jenny blinked at the change of subject. What? Your grandmother. You talk about her shop but never about her. What's she like? Jenny settled back, letting herself relax slightly. Her name is Ruth. She's 78, stubborn as a mule, and has opinions about everything. She taught me that flowers have language, that what you choose and how you arrange them can say things words can't. She believes in second chances and forgiveness, and that everyone deserves beauty in their life, no matter how poor they are. That's why she's always giving away arrangements to people who can't pay. It's driving us into bankruptcy, but she won't stop. She sounds kind. She's the best person I know. Igor was quiet, then said something that surprised her. I'd like to meet her. Are you insane? She can't know about any of this. I don't mean as Igor Kane the criminal. I mean as someone you're seeing. Someone normal. There's nothing normal about this situation. No, but maybe there could be. For a moment, Jenny let herself imagine it. Igor meeting Ruth, helping in the shop, being someone ordinary. The fantasy was so absurd it almost made her laugh. You can't separate who you are from what you do. Your men were right. This is dangerous. For both of us. Igor pulled her closer, and she let herself lean against him despite every warning her brain was screaming. Then let's be dangerous together. Just for a little while. Let's pretend we're two normal people who met in a normal way and get to figure this out without murder and threats and crime complicating everything. That's impossible. So is letting you live. So is feeling what I feel when I look at you. But here we are anyway. They stayed like that for hours, talking about everything except the obvious complications. Igor told her about growing up in luxury that was really a cage, about learning his father's business while going to private schools, about the moment he'd realized there was no escape from the life he'd been born into. Jenny told him about foster care, about the families who'd been cruel and the few who'd been kind, about finding her grandmother when she was 15 and finally understanding what home felt like. When he drove her back that night, he kissed her again at her door, softer this time, like a promise, or maybe a goodbye. Tomorrow, he said, same delivery schedule. I know. And Jenny? Be careful. The people in my organization, some of them won't understand this. What I'm doing with you. Won't understand or won't approve. Both. There are rules about outsiders. Rules I'm breaking by keeping you around. Then maybe you should let me go. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I should do a lot of things. Letting you go isn't one of them anymore. The danger Igor warned about arrived 2 weeks later in the form of Vincent Russo, his second-in-command and oldest friend, a man whose loyalty to Igor was legendary in the organization, but whose face now carried an expression of cold fury that made Jenny's survival instincts scream warnings she couldn't ignore. She was making a routine delivery to Marcello's, one of the Italian restaurants on the north side that served as both legitimate business and money-laundering operation. When Vincent cornered her in the storage room among boxes of imported olive oil and industrial cans of tomatoes, the door clicked shut behind him with a finality that made her heart rate spike. You need to disappear, he said without preamble, without the pretense of pleasantries or small talk, his voice flat and hard as concrete. Pack up, leave town tonight if you can, and never contact Igor again. Not a call, not a text, not even a thought in his direction. Jenny's hands stilled on the invoice she'd been checking, her mind racing through possible responses, possible escapes. Excuse me? Vincent stepped closer, deliberately using his considerable size to intimidate. He was built like a linebacker, all muscle and menace, the kind of physical presence that made most people instinctively back down. I've known Igor since we were kids, since before his father brought him into the business. I watched his father's weakness destroy him, watched him get soft over a woman and lose everything because of it. I won't watch the same thing happen to Igor, not when I can prevent it. His eyes were cold, calculating, the eyes of a man who'd made difficult decisions and slept fine afterward. I'm not anyone's weakness, Jenny said, forcing her voice to remain steady even as her pulse hammered against her throat. You're a liability. A witness he should have eliminated the night he killed Dmitri but didn't, because he's developed feelings for you. That makes you the most dangerous person in his life right now. More dangerous than any rival organization or undercover cop. Vincent's jaw tightened. The old Igor would have understood that. The Igor who's kept us all alive and prosperous for the past 5 years would have handled this situation without hesitation. But you've made him weak. Made him question instincts that have never failed him before. Jenny stood her ground despite her racing heart, despite every instinct screaming at her to run, to get out of this storage room and this life before it swallowed her completely. If you're so concerned about me being a threat, why not just kill me yourself? Solve the problem cleanly. Tell Igor I left town. Make up whatever story you need. You've probably killed for less. The challenge hung in the air between them, dangerous and electric. Because Igor would never forgive me, Vincent said, and for the first time she heard something other than cold calculation in his voice. Actual pain, the kind that comes from loving someone like a brother and knowing you might lose them. And because, unlike some people in this organization, I still believe in loyalty. Real loyalty, not the kind that's bought with money or enforced through fear. Igor saved my life when we were 17, took a bullet meant for me, and nearly died because of it. I owe him everything. He ran a hand through his dark hair, looking suddenly tired beneath the menace. So, instead, you're trying to scare me away like I'm some naive girl who doesn't understand what she's gotten into. I'm trying to save both of you from a situation that ends badly no matter how it plays out. Vincent's voice dropped lower, more urgent. The men are talking, making plans in dark corners and private meetings. There's a faction that thinks Igor has gone soft, that he's compromised by his attachment to you. They're looking for proof that he's lost his edge, that he's become a liability to the organization, and you're it. You're the evidence they'll use to justify what comes next. Jenny felt ice slide down her spine. What kind of plans? Vincent's expression darkened with something that looked almost like grief. The kind that end with Igor dead and someone new in charge. Someone who understands that feelings are fatal in this business, that any attachment is a weakness that will eventually be exploited. They're waiting for the right moment, gathering support, making alliances. And every day that Igor continues seeing you, every time someone spots you together or hears about his visits to your apartment, they get stronger. "You can't be serious," Jenny said, though she could hear the tremor in her own voice, could feel the truth of his words settling into her bones like poison. His own men would betray him? Would actually kill him? "Dead serious," Vincent replied, and the pun, if it even was one, carried no humor whatsoever. Igor's father was killed by his closest advisor, Constantine, someone he trusted completely and considered almost like family. They'd known each other for 30 years, shared meals and secrets and blood. And one day, Constantine put a bullet in the back of his head because he'd decided the old man's affection for a cocktail waitress made him unfit to lead. He moved closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "Power corrupts loyalty, Jenny. Always has, always will. In this world, the only thing more dangerous than your enemies is the people who stand closest to you, because they know exactly where to put the knife." Jenny felt physically sick, her stomach churning with the implications of what he was telling her. Does Igor know? Does he understand how serious this is? He suspects, but he's too distracted to see how bad it's actually getting, how close they are to making their move. Too busy thinking about you, planning dates, trying to figure out how to make this impossible situation work. Vincent's expression softened slightly, almost sympathetically. "Because of me," she said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Vincent nodded slowly. "So do us all a favor, and leave. Take money if you need it. I'll give you enough to start over anywhere you want. Set up a new life where no one knows your face or your history. Just get out of the city before your continued presence costs him everything he's built, everything he's sacrificed for." The words hung in the air like a death sentence as Vincent left without another word, the door closing behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded final. After Vincent left, Jenny stood in the storage room shaking, surrounded by the mundane supplies of restaurant life while processing information that felt like it belonged in a different universe. Entirely. She thought about running, about disappearing the way she'd learned to do in foster care when situations became untenable. Pack light, move fast, leave no forwarding address, become someone new in a city where no one asked questions. She'd done it before, could do it again. The Jenny Morrison who existed on paper could vanish as easily as she'd appeared, leaving behind nothing but unpaid rent and a few curious neighbors. But she also thought about Igor, about the dangerous man who'd somehow shown her more gentleness than anyone in her chaotic life, who'd made her feel seen and valued and protected for the first time since her grandmother died when she was 8. That night, instead of waiting for Igor to pick her up for their planned dinner at the new French place downtown, Jenny went to his penthouse unannounced, her heart hammering as the private elevator climbed toward his floor. He opened the door looking surprised and pleased, his expression softening the way it only did when he saw her, until he registered her face. Pale, determined, afraid. "What happened?" he asked immediately, pulling her inside, his hands gentle on her arms as he searched her face for signs of injury or threat. "Vincent paid me a visit, said I need to leave town immediately or I'll get you killed." Igor's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin, and she saw the flash of fury in his eyes before he controlled it. "Vincent had no right to approach you, no authority to make threats or demands. He overstepped badly." "He had every right. He's trying to protect you from a threat you're apparently too blind to see." "From what? Happiness? From the first genuine thing I've felt in years?" "From your own weakness," Jenny said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her with a finality that felt symbolic. "He told me about the faction planning to move against you, about the men who think you've gone soft, about how your father died at the hands of someone he trusted, about how I'm the living proof they need that you've lost your edge, that you're compromised and dangerous to the organization. Igor turned away, moving to the bar with rigid shoulders, pouring himself a drink he didn't actually drink, just held like a prop. Vincent talks too much. He always has. Is it true? That your own men are actively planning to kill you? Some of them, maybe. There's always discontent. Always someone who thinks they could do better. Lead smarter. I've been handling it the way I always do. By ignoring it while you waste time with me, while you make yourself vulnerable for someone who isn't worth it? I'm not wasting anything, Igor said sharply, spinning to face her. The time I spend with you is the only time I feel human anymore, the only hours where I'm not calculating angles and watching for knives in the dark. You're not a waste. You're the only thing keeping me sane. That's the problem, Igor. You can't afford to feel human. Not in your world where humanity is a liability. Not when it costs lives. Maybe your life. His laugh was bitter and sharp as broken glass. So what? You're breaking up with me for my own good? That's very noble and self-sacrificing. Very romantic. I'm trying to keep you alive, you stubborn idiot. I don't need your protection, Jenny. I need... He stopped abruptly, the words catching in his throat like he couldn't quite force them out. What? What do you need? She pressed, moving closer. You. And I hate it. I hate that I've become my father, that I've let someone matter enough to become a genuine weakness that others can exploit. But I can't stop. I've tried. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Every time I tell myself to let you go, to handle this the way I should have from the beginning, cleanly, finally, and then I see you. And nothing else matters except keeping you close. Jenny crossed to him, taking his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Then we have to be smarter about this. We have to make them think we're done, that you've come to your senses, while we figure out how to handle the real threat. You want to fake a breakup? I want to buy time. You deal with Vincent's faction, eliminate the threat properly, and then maybe we can figure out what this is without people actively trying to kill you over it. And if I can't eliminate the threat, if the only way to secure my position permanently is to prove I'm as ruthless as ever, as cold and calculating as my father was before he got weak, then you do what you have to do, including killing me if that's what it takes to survive. Igor pulled back like she'd physically struck him. I would never. Don't even suggest it. You killed a man in front of me, Igor. Shot him in the head without hesitation. You're clearly capable of anything when survival demands it. That was different. Dmitri was a traitor who'd stolen from the organization and put everyone at risk. He knew the consequences and chose his path anyway. You're innocent in all of this. I'm a witness to murder. I'm a complication you can't control. I'm exactly the kind of loose end your father would have tied up without a second's hesitation, without losing sleep afterward. You know it's true. The ugly truth of it hung between them like a blade suspended by thread. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Igor pulled her close, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip even slightly, like she was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to quicksand. I won't kill you. No matter what it costs me, no matter how many men I lose or how much power I have to surrender, I won't do it. Then we're both fools, Jenny whispered against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath expensive fabric. Yes, Igor said, his voice rough with emotion he usually kept locked away. I suppose we are? The worst kind of fools, the ones who know exactly how this story ends and choose it anyway. The fake breakup started the next day. Jenny stopped making deliveries, stopped answering Igor's calls, made it look like she'd finally come to her senses and run. Vincent seemed satisfied, and the whispers among Igor's organization shifted from concern about his weakness to approval of his renewed focus. But secretly, Igor was hunting. He used contacts and cameras and the kind of patient investigation that had built his empire to identify every man in the faction planning to move against him. There were 5 of them, led by Tommy Russo, Vincent's younger brother and a man who'd always been ambitious beyond his capability. Igor gathered evidence of their planning, documented their meetings, recorded their conversations. And then, on a cold Tuesday night 3 weeks after Jenny had disappeared from his life, he called them all together in the same warehouse where everything had started. Jenny wasn't supposed to be there. Igor had been clear about that. But she'd been watching from a distance, tracking his movements through the locations she knew, and when she saw him heading to the warehouse, she followed. She arrived to find the 5 men lined up like criminals before a judge, Igor standing in front of them with a gun in his hand and fury in his eyes. "You wanted to know if I'd gone soft," Igor said, his voice carrying in the empty space. "Wanted to test my leadership because I let a witness live. So here's your answer." He raised the gun, and Jenny's heart stopped. But instead of shooting the men, Igor fired into the ceiling, the sound echoing like judgment. "I could kill you all right now. That's what my father would have done. Quick, brutal, decisive. But I'm not my father." Vincent stepped forward from where he'd been watching. "Igor, what are you doing? Making a different choice." Igor lowered the gun. "These men plotted against me, planned to take over my organization, wanted me dead. Under any reasonable standard, they deserve execution. But executing them makes their families enemies, makes their friends question my leadership, creates a cycle of revenge that never ends. So instead, they're out. Effective immediately. All assets, all connections, all protection gone. They're civilians now. And if they ever step foot in my territory again, then I'll kill them." The 5 men looked stunned, like they couldn't believe they were being spared. Tommy Russo found his voice first. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Igor agreed. "But it's my mistake to make. Now get out." After they left, escorted by Igor's loyal men to ensure they actually departed, Vincent approached his friend. "That was either brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever done. Time will tell." Vincent glanced around the warehouse. "She's here, isn't she? That's why you chose this place, because it's where you met her." Igor didn't confirm or deny it, just said, "Go home, Vincent. We'll talk strategy tomorrow." After everyone left, Jenny emerged from her hiding spot behind some crates. Igor didn't seem surprised to see her. "I told you to stay away. I don't follow instructions well." Apparently. He holstered his gun, and Jenny saw how tired he looked. "You spared them." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you were right. I can't keep solving problems with violence. It just creates more problems, more enemies, more reasons for people to want me dead. I need to build something different. Something that doesn't require me to be a monster." "You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things. There's a difference." Igor walked to where she stood, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "I missed you. 3 weeks felt like 3 years. I missed you too." But Vincent was right. Being with me puts a target on your back. So we changed the game. Instead of me being your weakness, I become your strength. "How?" Jenny smiled. "You need to go legitimate. Not all at once, but gradually. Use your resources to build legal businesses, phase out the criminal operations, transform your empire into something that doesn't require murder to maintain. That could take years. Then we have years. If you want them." "Do I want them?" Igor pulled her close and she wrapped her arms around him. "Jenny, I spent my whole life believing that caring about someone was fatal, that love was a weakness that would destroy me. And then you walked into that warehouse and everything I believed started to crack. The question isn't if I want years with you. It's whether you want them with me, knowing what I am, what I've done. I don't want them with who you were. I want them with who you're becoming. Then I guess we're doing this. The impossible thing. The dangerous thing. Yes. They kissed in the empty warehouse where their story began, surrounded by ghosts and possibilities, two broken people choosing to be dangerous together. 5 years later, Jenny stood in the expanded flower shop, now 3 times its original size, watching her grandmother teach a group of kids from the neighborhood about flower arranging. Igor had funded the expansion, helped her develop a program that taught at-risk youth job skills while giving them a safe place to learn. It was legitimate, beautiful, and nothing like the deliveries she'd made when they first met. Igor walked in carrying coffee, and Ruth looked up with a smile. "There's my favorite grandson," she said, the title she'd given him after they'd finally told her the truth about how they met. Edited truth, but truth nonetheless. "You're her only grandson," Igor replied, kissing Ruth's cheek. "Then I'm both her favorite and her least favorite, which seems efficient." The kids laughed, and Jenny marveled at the transformation. Igor still ran his organization, but he'd spent 5 years slowly transforming it. The criminal operations were being phased out, replaced by legitimate businesses. It wasn't perfect. There were still shadows in his world, still dangers. But he was trying. That evening, they had dinner at the penthouse that no longer felt empty. Jenny's things were scattered throughout, her clothes in his closet, her books on his shelves, her presence making the space finally feel like a home. Vincent joined them, now running the legitimate side of Igor's empire and surprisingly good at corporate strategy. He'd become Jenny's friend over the years, his initial hostility transformed into protective affection. "You two disgust me," he said, watching them cook together in the kitchen. "All that domestic bliss. It's unnatural." "You're just jealous," Jenny replied, stirring sauce while Igor chopped vegetables. "I am, actually," Vincent admitted. "I never thought I'd see Igor happy. Real happy, not just satisfied or powerful. You changed him." "We changed each other," Igor corrected. "I taught her about power. She taught me about purpose." After dinner, Igor pulled Jenny onto the balcony where they could see the city lights. He'd been nervous all evening, which was unlike him. "What's wrong?" Jenny asked. "Nothing's wrong. Everything is actually terrifyingly right." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "5 years ago, you witnessed a crime and I made the worst decision of my criminal career. I let you live." "Best decision," Jenny corrected. "Worst decision for maintaining my reputation as a ruthless crime boss." "But you're right. Best decision for everything that actually matters." He opened the box to reveal a ring. Simple and elegant. "I'm not good at this, Jenny. I don't know the right words. My father never taught me about love, only about power. But you've taught me that they're not opposites. That real power comes from choosing to be vulnerable with someone you trust. So I'm asking, will you marry a reformed criminal who's still figuring out how to be a good man?" Jenny's eyes filled with tears. The flower delivery girl who witnessed a murder marrying the Mafia boss who decided not to kill her. That's quite a story. It's our story. Then yes. Absolutely, yes. He slid the ring on her finger and they kissed as the city sprawled below them, transformed from a kingdom he controlled to a home they were building together. That night, lying in bed, Jenny traced patterns on Igor's chest. "Do you ever regret it? Letting me live?" "Every day." Her hand stilled and he caught it, bringing it to his lips. "I regret it because it complicated everything, made me question everything, turned my carefully controlled world into chaos. But I wouldn't change it. Not for anything." "Why not?" "Because you showed me that survival isn't the same as living, That safety isn't the same as happiness. My father thought emotions were weakness, but he was wrong. The real weakness is being so afraid of feeling that you never let yourself be human. I think he'd be proud of you, Igor. The man you've become. I don't know about that, but I know my mother would be. She believed in second chances, in people changing. She died trying to teach my father that lesson. Maybe I finally learned it. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, two people who'd found each other, in the worst possible way, and somehow made it into something beautiful. The wedding happened in the flower shop, surrounded by blooms and the people who'd become their family. Ruth cried through the entire ceremony. Vincent served as best man and complained about the emotional trauma of seeing his friend this happy. The neighborhood kids they'd been teaching all came, dressed in their best clothes and completely unaware that the groom had once been the most feared man in Riverside's underworld. When it was time for vows, Igor took Jenny's hands and spoke words he'd written himself. 5 years ago, I was a man who believed in power and control and the certainty that emotions would destroy me. Then you walked into my life by accident, witnessed my worst moment, and somehow saw past the monster to find something worth saving. You taught me that strength isn't about walls, it's about bridges. That real power comes from choosing to be vulnerable. That love isn't weakness, it's the only thing that makes us strong enough to change. I vow to keep changing, keep growing, keep becoming someone worthy of the second chance you gave me. Jenny could barely speak through her tears. Igor, I was invisible before you. I moved through the world like a ghost, convinced that being seen meant being hurt. You saw me anyway. You saw past my defenses to find the person I was too afraid to be. And yes, you're right. We met in the worst possible way, but I wouldn't change it. Because that moment in the warehouse taught me that sometimes the scariest things lead to the most beautiful transformations. I vow to keep seeing you, all of you, the good and the complicated and the still healing. I vow to be your partner in building something better than either of us could create alone. They kissed as husband and wife while their found family applauded, and Jenny thought about the moment she'd pressed against that warehouse wall, terrified and certain she was about to die. She'd witnessed a crime and expected a bullet. Instead, she'd found a partner, a purpose, and proof that people could change if they wanted to badly enough. That night, at the reception in a restaurant Igor owned, but that now served the community rather than hiding crimes, Vincent pulled Jenny aside. I owe you an apology, he said, for trying to scare you away 5 years ago. You were protecting your friend. I was. But I was also wrong. I thought emotions would destroy Igor. Instead, they saved him. You saved him. We saved each other. That's how it's supposed to work. Vincent raised his glass. To the flower girl who was brave enough to teach a Mafia boss about love, and to the Mafia boss who was smart enough to learn. As the night wore on, Jenny and Igor slipped away, walking through the city streets that had once felt dangerous, but now felt like home. Do you think we'll ever be completely normal? Jenny asked. Probably not. Is that okay? Igor pulled her close. I think normal is overrated. I think what we have, this complicated, hard-won, transformed from darkness thing, is better than normal. It's real. That night, lying in bed in the penthouse that had become their home, Jenny thought about the journey from that warehouse to this moment. About how witnesses weren't always killed, how criminals could change, how love could grow in the strangest soil. Igor was right. They'd never be normal, but they were real. They were healing, and they were building something that proved redemption wasn't just possible but worth fighting for. The flower delivery girl and the Mafia boss, the witness and the criminal. Two broken people who'd found each other in violence and chosen to build something beautiful instead. It wasn't the story either of them expected, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. If you witnessed a crime by someone dangerous, would you run to save yourself or take the risk of seeing if there's something worth saving in them? Let me know in the comments what you'd honestly do. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories about people who choose transformation over tradition and love over fear.